Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsors, for bringing this legislation. We've had some great discussions even last week when we discussed Supreme Court cases and how they apply. And we debate an issue like this. It simply always surprises me that we jump to the worst case scenario, and then we use someone's scenario or example that actually violates the Second Amendment, that actually doesn't carry when you're supposed to carry a firearm, and that we are bringing attention to the criminal act instead of the good guy or the good gal that is actually out there carrying what they're supposed to do when and under what our Second Amendment is supposed to do, which restricts the government from the wearing and bearing and the enjoyment of arms. And so it's interesting to me when we have that conversation in the criminal sense that this somehow matters to a criminal more, that they have more rights as the good guy that operates under what the Second Amendment is supposed to be. We'd always immediately jump to someone that takes that gun, and Chairman Eldridge alluded to this earlier, then all of a sudden you blame the gun. We don't blame the vehicle that that person is driving drunk and kills a family because they're a drunk driver. No one is saying take that vehicle away. No one is saying if someone kills someone with a hatchet, with a knife, with anything other than a gun, stating that it's the knife or the hatchet that we should limit someone from committing that crime. We are distracted from the problem here, that we use these crimes to say it's the gun when it's the criminal. And that should be our focus. And I think that's what this is all really about, is that we get distracted to what it means when this Second Amendment was written. And it was even discussed last time in the sense of the Supreme Court cases that was discussed, that a musket would be the same as a musket today for the long arm argument. And I would say to that argument that you can't also in the same breath guarantee the right to your First Amendment right to a journalist. Back then you could only write on what we wouldn't even call paper now. So does your right to freedom of speech stop now because a government entity, a public person, can have a Facebook account? That becomes a government means of communication. Therefore, I can't limit what someone says on a personal Facebook page. In that breath would mean, yes, that the First Amendment wouldn't apply to a government official on the internet, because the internet didn't exist 200 years ago, over 200 years ago, when the First Amendment was written. So you can't make that argument with the same breath that then only applies to a musket, because those aren't what we have today. So I believe the focus of this is in the right place, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Todd and Chairman Grills, and I appreciate the legislation, but I think the focus has to be on the act of someone carrying their guns, their handguns, their rifles in the sense of the Second Amendment, and not the focus on the criminal act, which is what we always do in the debate as it relates to the Second Amendment. And that, in my opinion, should be over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.